Dr. Velthar adjusted his surgical tools for the third time that morning. The Etherian medic had been working aboard the Galactic Medical Station Sanctuary for 12 years, and nothing surprised him anymore. Or so he thought. The emergency alarm pierced through the quiet medical bay. Red lights flashed across the walls as the station's communication system crackled to life. Priority medical emergency. Human vessel requesting immediate assistance. Multiple casualties reported. Velthar froze. Humans? He had heard stories about this new species that had recently joined the galactic community. They came from a planet called Earth, somewhere in the Outer Rim territories. Most species spoke of them with curiosity, but few had actually met one. Dr. Velthar to emergency bay. The voice called again. He gathered his equipment and hurried down the corridor. His blue-green skin shimmered under the bright lights as his forearms moved quickly to organize his medical supplies. As chief medical officer of Sanctuary, he had treated over 40 different species. How different could these humans be? The docking bay doors hissed open as a damaged ship limped into the station. Black scorch marks covered its hull, and several sections showed signs of explosive decompression. Through the viewport, Velthar could see figures moving inside. Captain Li Da-un was the first to emerge from the airlock. She was shorter than Velthar had expected, with dark hair pulled back and wearing a torn uniform. Her face was streaked, with dirt and what looked like dried blood. "Doctor, we need help immediately," she said in heavily accented galactic standard. "Mining accident on asteroid Kepler 442b. We have 4 seriously injured crew members." Velthar nodded and followed her into the ship. The smell hit him first. It was sharp and metallic, but underneath was something else. Something that made his instincts twitch with unease. It smelled like a predator's den. The injured were in the ship's medical bay. 3 were unconscious, but the 4th was awake and alert. This was Kim Tae-ho, the ship's engineer. A large piece of metal had pierced his abdomen, and by all medical logic, he should have been dead hours ago. "You the doc?" Tae-ho asked, his voice steady despite his obvious pain. Velthar stared. The human's eyes were clear and focused. His vital signs, according to the ship's basic medical scanner, should have indicated someone in severe shock or unconsciousness. Instead, Tae-ho was studying Velthar with obvious intelligence. "Yes, I am Dr. Velthar. We need to get you to surgery immediately." "About time," Tae-ho replied. "This thing's been annoying me for 6 hours." Annoying? Velthar looked at the metal fragment again. It had punctured what should be vital organs in most humanoid species. The blood loss alone should have killed him. They moved all 4 patients to the medical bay. Velthar decided to operate on Tae-ho first since he was conscious and could provide information about human anatomy. The other 3 humans were breathing, but their injuries looked severe. Park Min-soo had multiple broken ribs and what appeared to be internal bleeding. Choi So-young had severe burns across 30% of her body. Oh Dong-min had a head injury that would have left most species in a permanent coma. Yet their vital signs were stronger than Velthar expected. "Doctor," Captain Lee said, "my crew is tough. They've survived worse than this." Velthar wasn't sure what that meant, but he nodded and began preparing for surgery. In the operating room, Tae-ho lay on the table as Velthar attached monitoring equipment. The readings were strange. The human's heart rate was elevated but steady. His blood pressure was low but not dangerously so. Most puzzling, his brain activity showed he was fully alert. "I'm going to give you something to help you sleep," Velthar said, preparing the anesthetic. "Skip it, Doc, I want to stay awake." "That's not possible. This surgery will be extremely painful." Tae-ho shrugged, which should have been impossible. "With his injuries, I've had worse. Just get that metal out of me so I can get back to work." Against his better judgment, Velthar began the procedure with local anesthetic only. As he made the first incision, he expected Tae-ho to lose consciousness from shock or pain. Instead, the human watched with interest. "Neat tools," Tae-ho commented, as Velthar worked. "What kind of metal is that scalpel made from?" Velthar's hands shook slightly. No patient had ever remained this alert during major surgery. As he worked deeper, carefully removing the metal fragment, Tejo continued to make observations about the medical equipment. Your technique is pretty good, Doc, but you might want to angle that retractor differently. I can see where you're going, and there's probably a major blood vessel about 2 centimeters to your left. Velthar checked his scanner. The human was correct. How could he possibly know that? I worked construction before I became an engineer, Tejo explained as if reading his thoughts. You learn anatomy when you've seen enough industrial accidents. As Velthar worked to repair the internal damage, he was amazed at what he found. The human's organs had actually begun healing themselves. Tissue that should have died from trauma was somehow still viable. Blood vessels had formed new pathways around the damaged areas. How long ago did this injury occur? Velthar asked. About 8 hours, Tejo replied. Maybe 9. Impossible. No known species could survive this type of trauma for that long, without immediate medical intervention. Then it happened. As Velthar reached for a deeper section of damaged tissue, his instrument accidentally touched what appeared to be a nerve cluster. Tejo's entire body tensed and a sound came from his throat that made Velthar's blood freeze. It was a growl, low, threatening, and utterly primal. For a moment, the human's eyes changed. They became something wild and dangerous. The civilized, engineered disappeared, replaced by something that looked like it belonged in the wilderness of some deadly world. Velthar jerked backward, his surgical instrument clattering to the floor. Sorry about that, Doc, Tejo said, his voice returning to normal. Reflexes, you know. Did I startle you? Startle? Velthar's entire body was shaking. In that moment, he had seen something that challenged everything he thought he knew about. Civilized species. Beneath the human's calm exterior was something that belonged in nightmares. Perhaps we should use general anesthesia after all, Velthar managed to say. If it makes you more comfortable, Tejo agreed. But I'm telling you, I'm fine. As the anesthetic took effect and Tejo finally lost consciousness, Velthar completed the surgery with trembling hands. The human's body responded to treatment better than any patient he had ever worked on. Healing was already beginning before he finished closing the incisions. When he was done, Velthar stepped back and looked at his patient. Tejo appeared peaceful in sleep, but the memory of that growl remained. It was the sound of something that had evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most other life forms. For the first time in his medical career, Dr. Velthar was afraid of a patient. As he prepared to check on the other 3 humans, he wondered what else he might discover about this species. One thing was certain, humans were not like any other species in the galaxy, and that terrified him more than he cared to admit. Dr. Velthar had barely finished cleaning his surgical tools when the next emergency call came through. Another human needed immediate attention. This time, it was Park Min-soo, the security officer with the broken ribs. Doctor, patient is awake and asking questions, Nurse Kretal reported through the communicator. Her voice sounded strained. Velthar hurried to the recovery ward. What he found there made him stop in the doorway. Park Min-soo was sitting up in bed, despite having multiple fractured ribs and internal bleeding. He was methodically examining the medical equipment around his bed. These restraints are poorly designed, Min-soo said to Captain Lee, who sat beside him. Anyone with basic training could get out of them in under 30 seconds. Min-soo, you need to rest, Captain Lee replied firmly. I can rest when I know the security situation. Who has access to this medical bay? What are the escape routes? How many exits does this station have? Velthar approached the bed cautiously. Mr. Park, you have serious injuries. You should not be sitting up. Min-soo turned to study him with sharp eyes. You're the doctor? Good. When can I return to duty? Return to duty? Velthar checked his medical scanner. Sir, you have 4 broken ribs, internal bleeding, and severe tissue damage. Most species would be unconscious for days. I'm not most species, Min-soo replied, and I don't like being in unfamiliar places without knowing the security setup. Dr. Quinala, Velthar's colleague, arrived with reports on the other patients. The tall, insect-like Zephyrian looked nervous. The female with burns is asking when she can go back to work. Quinala whispered. The pilot with the head injury keeps complaining about our medical equipment. Velthar felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean complaining? Come see for yourself. They walked to Choi So-young's room. The geologist had severe burns covering much of her upper body, yet she was awake and alert. She was talking to a medical technician about mineral composition. These bandages are made from processed plant fiber, she was saying. On Earth, we have synthetic materials that would heal burns twice as fast. Have you considered using graphene-based healing patches? The technician looked confused. Ma'am, you should rest. Burns this severe usually cause unconsciousness. Why would I be unconscious? So-young asked. It's just skin damage. The real problem is that I'm missing important survey data from the asteroid. How long until I can get back out there? Velthar stared at her medical readings. By all logic, she should be in severe pain and shock. Instead, she seemed more concerned about her work than her injuries. They moved to Oh Dong-min's room. The pilot was supposed to have a serious head injury, but he was sitting up and examining a medical instrument he had somehow acquired. This surgical laser is at least 20 years behind Earth technology, Dong-min said when he saw the doctors. The focusing crystal is decent quality, but the power modulation is crude. Who designed this thing? Sir, you have a concussion, Velthar said weakly. You should not be handling medical equipment. Concussion? Dong-min touched his bandaged head. This? I've had worse headaches from cheap alcohol. The real problem is that my ship's navigation system got damaged. When can I access your computer core to recalibrate our stellar positioning? Dr. Quinala pulled Velthar aside. This is not normal, she whispered. I've been practicing medicine for 40 years. Patients don't behave like this. I know, Velthar replied. But what are we supposed to do? Their vital signs are stable. They're healing faster than any species I've ever seen. Word of the strange human patients began spreading through the medical station. Other doctors came to observe them, and each left looking disturbed. Dr. Nekvar, an elderly Centaurian physician, examined Taeho's surgical site and shook his head. Impossible. This level of healing should take weeks, not hours. The tissue regeneration is unlike anything in medical literature, added Dr. Zilmoth, a crystalline being who specialized in trauma medicine. Their cellular repair mechanisms are operating at 10 times normal speed. Meanwhile, the humans continued to act as if their life-threatening injuries were minor inconveniences. Taeho woke up from surgery and immediately asked for his tools so he could fix the ship's engines. When told he needed to rest, he started sketching improved designs for the medical equipment on a tablet. Your power coupling system is inefficient, he told the engineering staff. I could increase your energy output by 30% with some basic modifications. Minsu had managed to create a complete security assessment of the medical station just by observing foot traffic patterns from his bed. He presented Captain Lee with a detailed report on potential vulnerabilities. The ventilation system has access points that aren't monitored, he reported. And there are at least 3 ways to reach the command center without using the main corridors. So-young had somehow convinced a technician to bring her geological survey equipment to her room. Despite having severe burns, she was analyzing mineral samples and updating her research data. The asteroid has rare Earth deposits that could revolutionize battery technology, she explained to anyone who would listen. We need to get back out there before someone else claims the mining rights. Dong-min had discovered that the medical bay's computer system was connected to the station's main network. Using a medical tablet, he had begun optimizing the station's power distribution systems. Your fusion reactor is running at 60% efficiency, he told the station engineers. I've uploaded some modifications that should fix that. Doctor. Velthar watched all of this with growing unease. These weren't normal patients. They were treating the medical station like a temporary workplace rather than a place of healing. Later that day, he called a meeting with the senior medical staff. We have a problem, he began. These humans are not responding to treatment the way any known species should. They're healing too fast, Dr. Quinala added, and they show no signs of pain or trauma response. It's more than that, Velthar continued. They're acting like predators who are temporarily inconvenienced rather than injured patients seeking help. Dr. Nekvar nodded grimly. I've been thinking the same thing. Have you noticed how they constantly assess their surroundings? They're always looking for threats or opportunities. The security officer has memorized our entire staff rotation in just 6 hours, Dr. Zilmoth observed. And the engineer keeps making suggestions to improve our systems, as if he's planning to take them over. Velthar felt the same chill he had experienced during Taiho's surgery. I think we need to research this species more carefully. There's something about humans that we don't understand. Something dangerous? Dr. Quinala asked. Velthar remembered the growl, the wild look in Taiho's eyes, and the casual way all 4 humans treated injuries that should have killed them. Yes, he said quietly. Something very dangerous. As if to prove his point, alarm sounded from Minsu's room. They rushed to find the security officer standing beside his bed, having somehow disabled the medical monitoring equipment. Sorry, Minsu said calmly, but those sensors were giving away too much information. About human physiology, Captain's orders. Captain Lee stood nearby, looking apologetic but determined. Doctor, we appreciate your help, but we need to protect some information about our species. I hope you understand. Velthar understood perfectly. The humans were not just unusual patients. They were something the galaxy had never encountered before, and they were far more dangerous than anyone realized. Dr. Velthar could not sleep. For 3 days, the images of his human patients had haunted him. The growl, the impossible healing, the casual way they treated fatal injuries. He needed answers. At Oro 300 station time, he made his way to the research library. The vast database contained information on every known species in the galaxy. Surely there would be something about humans that could explain what he had witnessed. He started with basic information. Humans came from a planet called Earth in the Sol system. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago, and were considered a young species by galactic standards. The first files seemed normal enough. Humans were bipedal, averaged 1.7 meters in height, and had a lifespan of approximately 80 standard years. Nothing unusual there. Then he found the planetary data for Earth. Velthar's eyes widened as he read. Earth's gravity was 1.2 times galactic, standard. Its atmospheric pressure was higher than most inhabited worlds. The planet experienced regular natural disasters, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, massive storms, and something called ice ages. But it was the biological data that made him stop breathing. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. Velthar had heard of death worlds, but he had never encountered anyone who actually lived on one. These were planets so hostile that most species used them only for mining operations, and even then with full environmental suits. He dove deeper into the research. Earth's ecosystem was built on something called predation. Species survived by killing and eating other species. Every life form was either a predator or prey, often both. The more he read, the more horrified he became. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters. They would chase prey animals for hours until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies were designed to run continuously for extreme distances. They could function in temperature ranges that would kill most galactic species. They could survive for days without water and weeks without food. Their immune systems could fight off diseases that would be fatal to other life forms. Most disturbing of all, humans seemed to get stronger under stress. Their bodies produced chemicals called adrenaline that increased their strength, speed, and pain tolerance during dangerous situations. No wonder, Velthar whispered to himself. No wonder they growl at scalpels. A voice behind him made him jump. Doctor, are you all right? Dr. Yoon Haijin stood in the doorway of the research library. She was the human xenobiologist from the injured crew, and she had been helping with the medical assessments of her crewmates. Dr. Yoon, Velthar said, trying to keep his voice steady. I was just researching human physiology to better understand how to treat your people. Haijin smiled and sat down beside him. I'd be happy to help. What would you like to know? Velthar hesitated. How could he ask about the terrifying things he had read without seeming rude? Your planet, he began carefully. The database says it's quite challenging. Oh, Earth? He-Jin laughed. Yes, it can be rough, but it's home, you know. We're used to it. Used to natural disasters and predators. Well, sure. I mean, we don't really think about it much. Every kid learns basic survival skills. How to find water, what plants are safe to eat, how to signal for help. Standard stuff. Standard? Velthar felt dizzy. And the predators? Most of the big predators avoid humans these days. We've been the dominant species for thousands of years, though you still need to be careful in some areas. Bears, big cats, sharks, crocodiles. But they're really not that dangerous if you know what you're doing. Velthar stared at her. She was talking about creatures that could kill most galactic species as if they were minor inconveniences. Dr. Yoon, he said slowly, yesterday your engineer remained conscious during major surgery and growled at my scalpel. Is this normal human behavior? He-Jin looked thoughtful. Taeho can be grumpy when he's hurt, and humans don't like feeling helpless. We prefer to stay alert during medical procedures when possible. But the growling, oh that. She shrugged, probably just instinct. When humans feel threatened or cornered, we sometimes revert to more primitive responses. It's leftover from our evolutionary past. Primitive responses. Velthar felt cold. What kind of evolutionary past? The usual stuff. Surviving in hostile environments, competing for resources, defending against predators. Earth wasn't an easy place to evolve intelligence. Only the toughest species made it. She said it so casually, as if surviving on a death world was the most natural thing in the universe. Dr. Yoon, how do humans view medical treatment? What do you mean? Your crew members seem more concerned with returning to work than with their injuries. They treat life-threatening trauma as minor problems. He-Jin nodded. That sounds about right. Humans are pretty resilient. We have to be. On Earth, if you let every injury stop you, you don't survive long. But Mr. Park had broken ribs and internal bleeding. Minsu? Yeah, he's tough. Security background, military training. He's probably had worse injuries during training exercises. Training exercises? They deliberately injured themselves for practice? Dr. Yoon, Velthar said carefully. What would be considered a serious injury to humans? She thought for a moment. Loss of limbs, major organ failure, severe brain trauma. Basically, something that would prevent you from functioning. Broken bones and cuts are just part of life. Velthar looked at his research again. According to galactic medical standards, every one of the human patients should have been in critical condition. According to human standards, they had minor injuries. There's something else, he said. Your people heal incredibly fast, faster than any species on record. Do we? He-Jin seemed genuinely surprised. I guess we never really thought about it. How fast do other species heal? Velthar showed her the comparative data. He-Jin's eyes widened. Oh wow, that is slow. No wonder you were worried about our crew. At that healing rate, those injuries really would be life-threatening. They are life-threatening by any medical standard except yours. Well, yes, but we're not other species, are we? The simple statement hit Velthar like a physical blow. No, they weren't other species. They were something unprecedented in galactic civilization. Dr. Yoon, has anyone in the galaxy studied human combat capabilities? Combat capabilities. She looked confused. We're not a military species, if that's what you're asking. We prefer diplomacy and trade. But you evolved as predators on a death world. Well, yes, but that doesn't mean we're aggressive. It just means we're survivors. Survivors. Velthar was beginning to understand that this word meant something very different to humans than it did to other species. At that moment, Kang Junho, the human anthropologist, entered the library. He looked concerned. Dr. Yoon, have you noticed that the station staff has been acting strangely around us? What do you mean? She asked. They seem nervous. The medical technicians keep their distance. Even the security personnel watch us carefully. When we move around the station, Velthar felt his hearts beating faster. The humans had noticed the changed behavior. I think, Junho continued, that our medical data might have given the wrong impression about humans. People seem to think we're more dangerous than we actually are. Velthar wanted to laugh, but it would have been hysteria rather than humor. More dangerous than they actually were. These people could survive injuries that would kill anyone else. They healed at impossible speeds, and they retained combat awareness even while critically wounded. How much more dangerous could they possibly be? Dr. Velthar, Heijin said, I hope our crew's behavior hasn't caused problems. We appreciate everything you've done for us. No problems, Velthar managed to say. Just learning. But as the two humans left the library, he realized that the learning process had only begun. And what he was learning about humanity terrified him more with each new piece of information. He looked at his research again and began composing a report. This information needed to reach the Galactic Medical Consortium immediately, because if humans considered their current patients to have minor injuries, Velthar didn't want to imagine what they would be like when they were actually hurt. 3 weeks after Dr. Velthar submitted his report to the Galactic Medical Consortium, the responses began arriving. What started as a routine medical incident was becoming something much larger. Admiral Zektor of the Hegemony Fleet stood in his command center, reading the medical files with growing alarm. The Titanoid officer was known for his calm demeanor, but these reports challenged everything he thought he knew about galactic species. Commander Yilseth, he called to his aide. Verify these human medical records. Are they accurate? The young officer checked her datapad. Yes, sir. 3 independent medical facilities have confirmed similar findings. Humans demonstrate extraordinary resistance to injury and trauma. Zektor studied the data again. Patients remaining conscious during major surgery. Healing rates 10 times faster than galactic standard. The ability to function with injuries that would incapacitate any other known species. This changes everything, he muttered. A species this resilient could be unstoppable in combat. Meanwhile, on the medical station, Dr. Sung Kyung-mi was fielding increasingly urgent communications from various galactic governments. As the chief medical officer of the human expedition, she had become the unofficial expert on human biology for the galaxy. Dr. Sung, came the latest call from the Centaurian Medical Council. We need clarification on human combat modifications. Combat modifications? Kyung-mi replied, confused. I'm not sure what you mean. The biological enhancements that allow humans to remain conscious during severe trauma. What military technology was used to create these capabilities? Kyung-mi blinked. There are no military technologies. Humans evolved naturally. The silence on the other end of the communication lasted several seconds. Doctor, are you saying that humans naturally possess biological capabilities that exceed those of enhanced military units from other species? I suppose so, yes. Is that unusual? Another long pause. Dr. Sung, we may need to schedule a more comprehensive discussion about human physiology. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. The Etherian Science Council wanted to know about human genetic engineering programs. The Zephyrian Military Command was asking about human battle conditioning techniques. The Aquarian Medical Institute requested information about human pain suppression technology. Each time, the answer was the same. Humans weren't enhanced or modified. They were just naturally tough. Captain Lee Da-yun received a priority message from Earth Command while her crew recovered on the medical station. Captain Lee, we're receiving inquiries from multiple galactic governments about human military capabilities. Please advise on current situation. She looked around the medical bay where her crew was recovering. Tae-ho was helping the station. Engineers upgrade their systems. Min-soo was conducting informal security assessments. So-young was analyzing mineral samples while recovering from severe burns. Dongmin was optimizing the station's computer networks. To her, they looked like injured people making the best of a bad situation. Apparently, to the rest of the galaxy, they looked like something else entirely. Earth Command, she replied. We have a public relations problem. The situation became more complex when Bei Seong-wan, a human diplomat stationed on the neutral world of Kepler Prime, received an emergency summons to the Galactic Council chambers. Seong-wan had been working to establish trade relations between Earth and various galactic civilizations. It was supposed to be routine diplomatic work. Instead, she found herself in a room full of worried alien officials. "Ambassador Bei," said Council Chairman Voxeler, a tall crystalline being. "We need to discuss recent medical reports about human physiology." "Of course," Seong-wan replied. "How can I help?" "Are humans a military species?" The question caught her off guard. "No, we're primarily explorers and traders. We prefer peaceful solutions to conflicts. But your species possesses biological capabilities that suggest extensive military conditioning." "I'm not sure I understand." Chairman Voxeler activated a holographic display showing medical data. "Humans can remain conscious and functional during trauma that would incapacitate any other known species. Your healing rates exceed those of enhanced military units. You show stress responses that increase combat effectiveness rather than impair it." Seong-wan studied the data. It was all accurate, but the interpretation was completely wrong. "Chairman, these aren't military enhancements. This is just how humans evolved." Evolved? The word seemed to cause a stir in the chamber. Several council members began speaking in their native languages. Yes, Earth is a challenging world. Humans had to become resilient to survive. "How challenging?" asked another council member. Seong-wan hesitated. She had learned during diplomatic training not to emphasize Earth's harsh conditions, as it made other species uncomfortable. "Well, it has an active geology, dynamic weather patterns, and a competitive ecosystem." Competitive ecosystem? Most Earth species survive by consuming other species. It's based on predation and resource competition. The chamber fell silent. Several species began consulting their data pads urgently. "Ambassador," Chairman Voxelar said carefully, "are you saying that humans evolved as predators on a world where survival required constant conflict?" When he put it that way, it sounded much more threatening than Seong-wan intended. "Not constant conflict," she corrected. "More like ongoing challenges." But the damage was done. She could see the fear in the eyes of the council members. They were looking at her as if she were a barely contained weapon rather than a diplomat. Over. The following days, the galaxy's response to the human medical data became clear. 3 major civilizations offered military alliance treaties. 2 others requested detailed information about human training methods. Several planets asked about hiring human security consultants. Dr. Velthar watched all of this unfold with a mixture of fascination and terror. His simple medical report had accidentally revealed humanity's biological advantages to a universe that feared what it didn't understand. He received a communication from Dr. Rixval of the Galactic Threat Assessment Council. "Dr. Velthar, your report has raised significant questions about human capabilities. We need you to conduct additional studies." "What kind of studies?" "We need to understand the full extent of human resilience. What are their actual limits? How much damage can they sustain and continue fighting?" "Dr. Rixval, these are patients, not test subjects. Doctor, if humans are as formidable as your data suggests, we need to know. For the safety of the galaxy." Velthar ended the communication feeling sick. His medical report was being treated as intelligence data about a potential threat. But as he watched Taeho casually lift equipment that should have required mechanical assistance, and observed Min-Soo unconsciously scanning for threats, even while lying in a medical bed, he wondered if the galaxy's fears were entirely unreasonable. Meanwhile, Captain Lee received another message from Earth Command. "Captain, galactic governments are requesting information about human military doctrine, combat training programs, and biological enhancement technologies. They don't seem to believe that humans are naturally resilient." She looked at her recovering crew again. They weren't super soldiers or enhanced warriors. They were just people doing their jobs and trying to heal from injuries. But she was beginning to understand that in a galaxy full of species that evolved on gentler worlds, even ordinary, humans might seem extraordinary. "Earth Command," she replied. "I think we need to send better diplomats. And maybe some biologists who can explain that we're not as scary as we look. Though as she watched Dongmin unconsciously analyze the station's defensive capabilities while recovering from a head injury, she wondered if that last part was entirely true. 6 months later, Dr. Velthar stood in his newly expanded medical bay, watching his latest patient with professional interest rather than terror. The human mining engineer had arrived with a broken arm and multiple cuts from an equipment malfunction. "So, Doc," the patient said cheerfully, "how long until I can get back to work?" "Mr. Kim," Velthar replied calmly, "your arm requires 6 weeks to heal properly." 6 weeks? The human looked disappointed. "On Earth, I'd be back in 2. "Yes, but you're not on Earth. You're on Sanctuary Station, where we follow proper medical procedures." Velthar had learned to be firm with human patients. They respected direct communication and clear boundaries. More importantly, he had learned not to be afraid of them. His assistant Nam Hyojin entered the room carrying medical supplies. The human medic had been assigned to Sanctuary Station after the diplomatic incident that followed Velthar's first report. "Dr. Velthar," she said, "the Centaurian delegation has arrived for their human physiology briefing." "Excellent. Are you ready to demonstrate proper human medical procedures?" "Ready as always." Hyojin smiled, "though I still think it's funny that I'm teaching alien doctors not to panic when treating humans." The irony wasn't lost on Velthar either. What had started as a medical emergency had become a galaxy-wide educational program. In the 6 months since his report, human medical data had revolutionized galactic understanding of biology and medicine. Medical schools now required courses in extreme physiology. Hospitals across the galaxy had established human-compatible treatment protocols. More importantly, the initial fear had transformed into something unexpected: respect. The Galactic Council chambers looked very different during the second human diplomatic session. Instead of worried officials treating Ambassador Bay as a potential threat, the council members seemed eager to learn more about human capabilities. "Ambassador," said Chairman Voxeler, "we've received remarkable reports about human performance in emergency situations." "Oh?" Xiangwan replied cautiously. 3 separate incidents where human crews managed to save failing space stations through actions that other species couldn't have survived. A mining disaster where humans worked for 36 continuous hours in toxic atmosphere to rescue trapped workers. A ship collision where human passengers remained calm and organized evacuation procedures while critically injured. Xiangwan smiled. "That sounds like typical human behavior during emergencies." "Typical?" several council members said simultaneously. "Humans tend to become more focused and effective under stress. We don't panic easily." This was the opposite of what most galactic species experienced. Under stress, they became less effective and needed additional support. The idea of a species that got stronger during emergencies was fascinating rather than frightening. "Ambassador," continued the chairman, "several member civilizations have requested human assistance with their emergency response programs." "What kind of assistance?" "Training, consultation, and direct support during crisis situations. It seems that human psychological and physical resilience could benefit many worlds." Back on Sanctuary Station, Captain Lee Dayun was reading reports from Earth Command with satisfaction. Her crew's accidental demonstration of human toughness had led to something unprecedented. Multiple civilizations were requesting formal alliances with humanity. But these weren't military alliances based on fear. They were partnerships based on respect for human capabilities. "Captain," Tejo said, entering her temporary office, "I've been working with the station engineers on their new power systems. They want to hire human technical consultants for their other facilities. And I've been asked to help design security protocols for 3 different spaceports," Minsu added. Apparently, human risk assessment is considered superior to most galactic standards. So Young had been offered positions with 4 different geological survey companies. They say human geologists are willing to work in conditions that other species can't handle. Dongmin had received invitations from 6 different shipping companies to help optimize their navigation systems. Human pilots apparently have a reputation for creative problem-solving under pressure. Captain Lee shook her head in amazement. A mining accident turned us into the most sought-after species in the galaxy. Dr. Velthar was experiencing similar changes in his career. He had become the galaxy's leading expert on human medicine. Despite his initial terror at treating them, his research papers were required reading in medical schools across known space. Extreme Biological Resilience in Sol 3 Sapiens had been downloaded over 2 million times. Medical Procedures for Chak and Medi, high-tolerance patients was being translated into 47 languages. But the most significant change was in his patients. Word had spread through human communities about Sanctuary Station's expertise in treating their species. Velthar now saw dozens of human patients every month. Each one taught him something new about their remarkable biology and psychology. "Dr. Velthar," said his latest patient, a human archaeologist who had survived a cave collapse. The other doctors were amazed that I stayed conscious with a punctured lung. "Is that really unusual?" "For most species, yes," Velthar replied as he completed her treatment. "You're the 47th human I've treated with injuries that would have killed any other patient. I'm no longer surprised." "Good," she said. "I was worried you might be one of those doctors who panics around human patients." Velthar laughed. The sound would have shocked his colleagues from 6 months ago. "I was, initially, but I've learned better." The transformation was complete when Velthar received a communication from the Galactic Medical Council. "Dr. Velthar, we're establishing a new medical specialty, xenophysiology, focused on treating species with extreme biological capabilities. We'd like you to head the program." "Extreme biological capabilities?" "Species like humans who exceed normal physiological parameters. We believe there may be others out there." Velthar considered this. The galaxy was vast, and if Earth could produce humans, other worlds might have evolved equally remarkable species. "I accept," he replied. "But I want Nam Hyojin as my assistant director. Humans understand their own physiology better than anyone." "Agreed. When can you start?" As Velthar prepared for his new role, he reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, he had fled from a patient who growled at his scalpel. Now he was recognized as an expert on treating the species that had once terrified him. The final measure of this transformation came when he received a message from Kim Tae-ho, the engineer who had started it all. "Dr. Velthar, I wanted to thank you for saving my life and for helping the galaxy understand humans better. Because of your work, my species is now seen as valuable partners rather than dangerous unknowns. Also," the message continued, "I'm getting married next month on Earth. My fiancé and I would be honored if you could attend the ceremony. We'd love to show you that humans aren't just tough patients. We're also good friends." Velthar looked at the invitation with genuine warmth. A human wedding on Earth, the death world that had created the most remarkable species he'd ever encountered. He began composing his acceptance. After all, how dangerous could Earth actually be? Then he remembered that humans considered their home world safe and comfortable, while the galaxy classified it as a Class 12 death world. Perhaps he would bring extra medical supplies just in case, but he would definitely attend. Because Kim Tae-ho was right about one thing. Humans weren't just remarkable patients. They had become remarkable friends. And that, Dr. Velthar realized, was the most important discovery of all. The species that had once terrified him with their growls and impossible resilience had taught the galaxy something valuable. Sometimes the most frightening strangers make the best allies. The medical bay's communication system chimed with another incoming human patient. Velthar smiled and went to meet them, no longer afraid of what he might find. After all, he was Dr. Velthar, the galaxy's expert on treating humans. And humans, he had learned, were exactly as dangerous as they needed to be to survive in a universe that was trying to kill them, which, as it turned out, made them perfect friends for everyone else trying to do the same thing.